Hello there. You've made it to this quiet place. So take a breath now, a little slower than the last. Let your jaw soften and your eyes grow heavy. Perhaps there's the faintest rustle of linen, the creak of an old floorboard far away, or the quiet rhythm of your own breath like leaves brushing against a window pane. Imagine your thoughts drifting down like candle wax, slow, warm, and unhurried, melting into a puddle of stillness. The room around you is safe. Listen for the hush in the corners. Now, gently picture a wooden rafter overhead. It's thick and splintered from age, nestled deep in the thatch of a medieval cottage roof. A swampy village perched on the edge of the woodlands, where the river runs slow and sour, and the air always smells faintly of rot. But more than anything, they have learned to stay off the floor once the sun goes down. You see, the rats come at night. Not just a few, not the kind you might chase away with a stick or a broom. You're not afraid exactly, just suspended, not quite part of the room. Below you, the hearth still glows faintly orange, and shadows curl in the corners. The fire crackles like it's whispering secrets it shouldn't say aloud. The thatch above shifts now and then with the breeze, or something else, the tiny crunch of something brittle under their feet. You hear them climbing the walls, sniffing along the beams, gnawing at the corners of sacks. Sometimes when the fire is low, you can hear them breathe. No, these are clever rats, hungry, organized. Some say they're cursed. Some say they're just rats who learned too much. They stay low, scuttling from shadow to shadow. They're not frightened. Not anymore. They've grown bold in this village. Shadows flicker from a low hearth below. This is where you'll sleep tonight, not on the cold dirt floor, but suspended above it, suspended from ropes like a sack of grain or a cradle made of netting. This is the only safe place left in the house, because the floor, you see, but you are whole, you are untouched. The floor is littered with trails, again dusty little paths left by the night. That's what people call it the first few hours after sundown, before the watch hour. You both lay in your slings, watching the fire turn to coals, listening, and in the far corner the remains of a dried fish are dragged half into the wall. But it doesn't come, not even the flap of claws on stone. The silence makes your stomach twist, is no longer safe. Our story tonight begins in a forgotten corner of a kingdom not marked on any noble's map, nor prayed for by any passing monk. The villagers have learned to live carefully here. They keep no livestock indoors after dusk, and sweep ashes over their thresholds each night to see what footprints appear by morning, more deliberate. You are 13 winters old when your father ties your first rope bed. It hangs from a loop in the central beam, swaying ever so slightly when you shift your weight. You can see her eyes wide in the dim light. She mouths something to you. Did you hear that? There are 2 knots, one above your head and one at your feet, tied tightly through an old pulley to let you lower and raise it from the ladder, swinging in and out of dream, always slightly above the world. It changes the way you breathe, the way you think. Your dreams become less about walking and more about floating. You imagine your whole life this way, above the ground, weightless, untouchable, a shadow on the ceiling. Your father shows you how to tie it off with a leather strap wrapped 3 times around the hook. 3 times, no fewer. You can see them when you visit your cousin's house or walk by the baker's loft. They're all strung differently, some with ropes, some with netting, some so high the ropes must be tied to the chimney stack. Your home is a cottage no bigger than a stable, with damp rushes on the floor and a cracked oil lamp that gives more smoke than light. But he's a careful man, and he's seen what happens when children sleep low. The sling is made from patched canvas woven from old grain sacks and softened with grease. Once for weight, he says, once for wind, and once for whatever else lives up there. He says it with a chuckle, but he doesn't laugh. That first night in the rope bed, you don't sleep much. You listen. You listen because there's nothing else to do. And in the stillness you hear them. Soft, wet footfalls on the floor. Little claws scratching at the corners. There are at least 6 of them, maybe more, but they do not climb the ropes. Not yet. Your father said they wouldn't. You trust the 3 knots. Morning comes and the rope bed creaks as you lower yourself to the ladder. Your arms are sore from clinging. Your neck aches, but you are fine. This becomes your life, suspended sleep. Others in the village have their own rope beds too. One night you and your cousin dare to stay up through first sleep, and the rats come again. But tonight is different. They're quiet. Too quiet. You wait for the familiar scratch, the scurry, the squeal. Then the wind picks up, and something thumps in the thatch above you. Your cousin hears it too. You nod. There it is again. A thump, but not a rat's kind of noise. Heavier. You reach for the edge of your sling, but stop. The rope sways. And then you hear the rats, not on the floor, but overhead. You've started to understand something about the silence, how it carries its own weight, its own sound, its own kind of warning. For so many nights now you've fallen asleep to the same rhythm, the shuffling feet of rats on the floor, the gentle scurry along the hearthstones, the soft gnawing at wood and rope and bone. It was never pleasant, but it was expected, predictable. The rats kept to the ground, mostly, and you kept to the air, swinging gently above them like an animal in its nest. There was a strange sort of peace in that arrangement, a fragile truce that held as long as everyone knew their place. But tonight, something is wrong. Tonight, it is not the rats that wake you, it is the quiet. You lower yourself from the sling with stiff limbs and sore hands. The knots you tied are still tight. No one else speaks of it either, but you begin to notice small things. It's small and drafty, but the rafters are high and strong. You eat a thin supper of barley stew and salted carrots, and then climb into your slings before the moon is fully risen. But the sound is too heavy, too smooth. It's something moving along the beams again, with that same slow, dragging rhythm. You glance toward your cousin. Her eyes are wide. She heard it too. Neither of you speaks. You both remain still in your slings, breath low and shallow. Your cousin's sling has a single strand of fraying thread curling out from one of its main loops. Just one. She sees it. You see it. No one touches it. Then something brushes against the rope above your cousin's head. She flinches, but she doesn't cry out. You rap them 3 times, then 4, then 5. You do not speak your father's name, but you think of him as you climb into the sling and listen to the wood groan above your head. The fire is out again. The coals barely glow. He's only 7, small and wiry, and still too young for his own sling. He'd been sleeping in a net beside his older brother, not far from the chimney. They say his knots were sound. that there were no signs of struggle, that the net was simply empty, hanging, untouched, still swaying when his mother came to wake him. You watch as the canvas sways ever so slightly, not from her movement, but from something unseen tugging at the line. Not even the elders who once said the rope beds were foolish. Every single sling is lifted, every knot tied again. But the ceilings no longer feel safe. The night no longer feels still. Even the rats have gone quiet. You both lie awake for a while, whispering quietly about nothing about the weather, about a cracked water jar, about the way the fire smokes in her hearth. You both avoid the topic pressing at the corners of your minds. But then the conversation fades and silence takes its place. You listen. The way others glance upward when walking past their own rafters. The way they pull their cloaks tighter around them in the middle of a sentence. The way they pause just briefly before climbing into their own slings. The silence is spreading, not just in the night, but in the waking hours too. And that silence, once a comfort, has become something else entirely. The leather cord is still wrapped just as your father taught you, once for weight, once for wind, and once for everything else. And yet you don't feel safe. You don't feel rested. You feel like something touched the edges of your sleep and then withdrew before you could catch it. The first thing you notice is the absence of sound. The usual night noises, the crackle of old timbers shifting, the sigh of the fire dying down, the rustle of mice among the thatch they are missing. The air feels still and swollen, like it's waiting for something. Not the familiar hurried scampering of small, nervous feet. Something is crawling along the beam above you, dragging itself along the ridgepole, testing the strength of the ropes as it goes. You can feel it not on your skin, but inside your bones. The ceiling, once a place of safety, now feels like open sky. Exposed, vulnerable, and you begin to realize with slow certainty that you're no longer alone in the rafters. This is heavier, slower, something dragging itself with purpose. You stare upward, willing your eyes to see through the dark, past the twisted knots of wood and reed. There's a moment of utter stillness, then a single creak, like the bending of rope under tension. The sound is soft, almost gentle, but it carries an eerie familiarity. It's the same sound your own sling makes when it rocks. You lie there in your sling, wrapped in layers of scratchy wool, staring up at the thatched ceiling with your heart beating softly in your throat. Below you, the fire has long since gone out. The coals are black. The light from the window is silver with moonlight, casting long, pale beams through the cold room. And that's when you hear it, not from below, from above. There's a faint scrape in the roof timbers, not a rat. You don't move. You don't speak. You hold your breath and try to listen without listening. The next morning comes like a slow exhale. The room is full of pale light and cold mist that crept in through the thatch during the night. That day, you say nothing. Not to your cousin, not to your neighbors. The next night, your cousin invites you to stay at her family's cottage, and you hear it again. At first, you think it's the wind, then maybe a rat. Minutes pass, or hours, you don't know. Eventually, the sound fades. Whatever it was moves on. The room remains still. When morning comes, you both descend quietly. No words are exchanged. That same morning, a boy from the far edge of the village disappears. And the next night, no one in the village sleeps on the floor. You return to your own home and tie your knots with trembling fingers. and up in the beams something is already waiting. It's strange how quickly the sound of scratching becomes comfort. You'd never expect it, but once it's part of every night, the silence becomes worse, far worse. The week after the boy's rope was found cut, the rats stopped moving. No skittering paws, no chewing, no climbing, nothing. At first, people in the village think it's a blessing, a reprieve. Someone even laughs aloud at the morning well, saying maybe the priest's iron bell finally scared them off. But those who've lived long here, they don't laugh. They look at the beams, at the roofs, at the rafters, and their eyes go soft and fearful. Your father begins tying his sling closer to yours, just under the same central beam. He says it's to share warmth. You both know it's not. He begins waking in the night, and once, when you blink open your eyes to the faint hearth light, you see him staring up at the ceiling, lips moving without sound, not praying, whispering, like he's speaking to something just above you, something in the dark, and then he goes quiet for 3 nights. On the 4th, he's gone. No rope marks, no blood. His sling is empty still, gently swaying. The knots are tied tight, the loops still secure. It's like he rose on his own and climbed into the rafters himself. You sit there, unmoving, for an hour, 2, until the fire dies and the frost creeps in, and then you feel it again. The weight above, a single creak, a presence you cannot see. Your voice won't come. Your body is still, but your mind is wide awake, not afraid exactly, more like being held in a hush, the kind you feel in a chapel or beneath a storm, and then you hear it. Not claws, not paws, not even breath. You hear rope, tugging, shifting, knot against knot, wood bending slightly beneath a new, deliberate weight. You whisper your father's name, just once. There's no reply. You begin to count your own knots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all tight, all holding. Your fingers run along the canvas of the sling, and you notice a coldness at the edge, dampness too. You lift your hand. It glistens in the hearthlight, just faintly red. Blood? No, it doesn't smell like blood. It smells like the river, like old fish, like decay in shallow water. You wipe it quickly and lie still, every muscle tense, suspended in sleep's waiting room, not quite dreaming, not quite waking. A place you've come to know well these last weeks. And then, finally, you drift. Not because you feel safe, but because sleep always wins. In the morning, the sling beside you is still empty. You do not look at the beams. You do not ask where your father went. You simply tie your knots tighter. 6 loops now. You don't speak to anyone that day. No one does. The village is silent, save for the groaning carts and the wind through dead brush. But that night, the rats come back. You hear them like you used to, scratching, skittering, gnawing through burlap and straw. At first, it's a relief. Their familiar noise, their rhythm, their hunger, but something is wrong. They aren't scared anymore. You see them in the glow of the firelight, brazenly stepping across the hearthstones. One even climbs the table leg and sits for a moment, staring up at the slings above. Its eyes reflect fire, and it doesn't blink. They're watching now, not just scavenging, not just feeding, watching. One of them climbs halfway up a loose net by the wall, just to see if it can. It falls, and the others scatter briefly. But it's a game to them now. You look around at the ceiling beams. You feel the quiet press in again. And you wonder, what if the rats were never the problem? What if they were just the messengers? The floor belongs to them. Always followed by the sound of something descending after you. The worst dreams don't wake you. They end in silence. And in the morning the knots feel looser, no matter how tightly you tie them. One day you visit the house of an old woman who used to be a midwife. Her sling hangs from two rusted chains, tight against the chimney itself. She says she hasn't stepped on the floor in 5 years. She offers you a bowl of broth, then points to the rafters with her spoon. They're not rats anymore, she says without blinking. They learned how to wait. You ask her what that means. She doesn't answer. She just pulls her shawl tighter around her shoulders and lifts herself back into her bed. You return home before dusk. You don't light the fire that night. You want to see the ceiling more clearly. And what you see makes your heart go still. Scratches, not from claws, but from fingernails. Long, wide arcs etched into the support beams just above where your father's sling used to hang. They weren't there yesterday, and one of them ends in a curled mark that looks like a handprint. Your hand, perhaps? You look up into the dark and tie your 7th knot. Sleep changes when you're always half listening. It becomes something thinner, more delicate, like a lace curtain that barely separates dream from waking. That night, wrapped tight in your sling and tied with 7 deliberate knots, you feel the strange hush of the around you. Your cousin moved her sling to the barn, and no one asks why. A subtle weight added to the air around you, like an unseen eye turning its gaze directly on your chest. The instinct to look, to confirm, to see it burns behind your eyes. But your body knows better. Some things are safer when they remain unseen. The sound stops, but the air remains dense. Not your mother's. A name from a dream. A comfort you once believed in. And slowly, breath by breath, the pressure in the air begins to fade. It retreats, not as if satisfied, but as if it's remembering something more interesting elsewhere. The silence resumes, and you finally fall into second sleep, though your body remains stiff with the residue of fear. You begin to count in your head, just to stay calm. Outside in the neighbor's yard, a cart has collapsed under the weight of wet hay. But that's not what holds your attention. A familiar field, the sound of geese, your father's laughter. But it shifts. It always shifts now. You're climbing, not walking, not running. Always climbing, hand over hand, a ladder made of rope that stretches into darkness above you. Something is climbing behind you too, matching your pace. You can't see it, but you can feel the rope twitching with every move it makes. And then it whispers your name so close, so clear you feel it curl in your ear like warm breath. What stops you cold is the small piece of knotted rope lying just beneath your window. It's frayed at one end, clean at the other. The air smells strange, metallic, and damp, like cold breath on iron. The rats don't come that night, not a single one. And still, the air doesn't feel empty, and looped 3 times. Just like the knots your father used to tie, the logs won't catch. You try 3 times, then give up and retreat into your sling. The knots hold. The air is dry, but the cold seeps deeper than it should, as though it's not just temperature, but memory sinking in. 1, 2, 3. Nothing. 4, 5. Stillness. On the count of 11, something taps the rope just above your head. Not hard, not fast, just a tiny flick, like a fingertip brushing the line to feel its tension. You don't know why, only that it feels important, like a key or a message. You lie there, utterly still, arms folded across your ribs as the sling gently rocks from an earlier twitch in your sleep. And then you hear the unmistakable sound of a rope knot tightening. Not yours. You know your knots. You know every twist and loop memorized like a prayer. This sound comes from above, from the beam itself. A soft, slow tightening, like someone pulling a noose just a little further up the rafter. People still nod at one another in the street, but the silence between them has thickened. The rats still come, but their movements have changed. They're more deliberate now. Less scavengers, more sentries. They come in small groups, pausing in corners, as though listening for something. One night you see 2 sitting side by side on the windowsill, perfectly still, their noses twitching toward the ceiling. You don't look up. You already know. The cottage is quiet except for the occasional creak of timber shifting in the cold, and the brittle whisper of dry thatch rustling above. The fire is out. You let it die on purpose. You wanted darkness, the kind that stretches across the beams and hides nothing. But there's something about the black above you tonight that doesn't feel empty. It feels heavy, occupied, a space already filled with breath that isn't yours. You try to remember how long it's been since your father disappeared. Days? Weeks? No one has spoken of it openly. The neighbors barely meet your eyes. In the deepest part of the night, between first and second sleep, you wake not to sound, but to pressure. Your breath catches, but you force yourself not to move. You do not scream. Your hands stay locked across your chest. You close your eyes and whisper a name you haven't spoken since you were younger. Not your father's. The next morning you awaken to the sound of wood splitting. You keep it. You wrap it in cloth and tuck it beneath the hearthstone, pressed between 2 slivers of bone, once used for sewing. That day the wind shifts. It blows from the direction of the dead village downriver. You sleep without a fire, again, but this time it's not by choice. When you drift off, your dreams are soft at first. You wake with a start. Your sling is still swaying, gently, too gently. The rope is wet. Your eyes adjust to the dark the way a hand adjusts to cold water, slowly, reluctantly, and never without discomfort. You don't move. You simply lie there in your canvas sling, suspended and wrapped, listening to the room breathe around you. It takes only a moment to be sure you are still alone, and yet the sounds continue. The soft groaning of invisible slings rocking just slightly from no breeze at all. The rope above your head strains faintly, as though under a shifting weight, not yours, but nearby. You know your house. You know its every board and beam. There's no other sling. Not anymore. Not since your father vanished. And yet, in the hush of the watch hour, something is mimicking the rhythm of sleep. Something is pretending. You lie there, letting your mind float just above fear, somewhere between logic and instinct. Maybe it's only memory. Maybe your ears are playing old sounds, echoing footsteps and creaking knots into the present. But you know better. There's a quality to the sound too present, too wet, like rope that has been dragged through water, the kind that leaves residue behind, something oily and thick. Eventually the sound stops, not gradually, not like a sleeper dozing off, but instantly, as though it noticed you noticing. That's the part that chills you deepest, not the presence itself, but the awareness behind it, that whatever is there knows that you are there too, that it waits until your breathing slows, until your body relaxes, until your eyes begin to glaze in the direction of dream. Only then does it move. Only then does it inch forward, knot by knot, across the beams above you. When morning finally arrives, it brings fog so thick the trees seem to vanish into milk. You rise stiffly, arms sore, your back cold with sweat that never quite evaporated in the night. The sling creaks as you climb down. The fire remains unlit. You don't want its warmth today. Somehow the darkness has begun to feel more honest. You avoid the central beam with your eyes, but as you move toward the hearth to gather your boots, you catch sight of something you can't ignore. There, on the wall beside the window, drawn in dust or soot, is a shape, a symbol. Small, no larger than your palm. Circular, twisted, not quite a spiral, more like a knot without a beginning. You rub it with your sleeve, but the mark remains. It wasn't drawn with soot, it's etched into the stone, scratched by something with a fine, sharp edge. You begin to see the same mark elsewhere, on the stone behind the kettle, on the edge of your stool, even faintly on the base of your water jug, always in places low to the ground, as though something moved around the cottage while you slept, not randomly but carefully, placing the symbol over and over like a warning, or a claim. That day you speak to no one. Even if you had words, there would be no one left to hear them. The village has grown quieter than ever. Fewer lights in windows, fewer boots in mud. Those who remain seem to avoid looking upward, as though the sky itself carries infection. You see one man hammering boards over the ceiling of his hut from the inside. Another drags his sleeping sling outdoors and hangs it between trees. But the fog doesn't lift, and the trees don't feel any safer than the rafters. That night, you find yourself delaying. You move slowly, checking the doors 3 times, gathering wood you don't burn, running your fingers along the length of the sling's edge for frays that aren't there. But eventually, the hour comes, the time between waking and dreaming, and there's nowhere left to be but up. You climb into the sling and tie your knots again. 8 turns now, and this time you use the old brass hook your father once warned you not to trust. He said it stuck too easily, that once it locked, it wouldn't come loose again without blood. But tonight, you welcome the stubbornness. You want the knot to hold. You want it to resist not just gravity, but intention. You lie back and let the swing cradle you in its slow sway. For a moment all is quiet. Then you hear it again. The sound of breathing, not yours. It's faint, slow and steady. Not from below, not from behind. From above. You open your eyes and see nothing but shadow. But within that shadow, movement. Slow, rhythmic. Something perched on the beam above you. Its arms, or what you think are arms, dangle slightly off the sides, and you see one finger curl against the wood. Then another, a tapping, a drumming. Not a threat, not yet, just Awareness. It knows you are looking. You shut your eyes and try to summon a memory, anything from before. A warm blanket, a song hummed by your mother, the heavy weight of summer dust on the windowsill. You picture all of it, let it fill your mind like fog, and pretend the thing above you is only wood and shadow. But the mind knows what it knows, and yours refuses to forget. Eventually, sleep comes not all at once, but in pieces, like wading into cold water, inch by inch. The sound fades, or your awareness of it does. The warmth of your own breath pools under the blanket. Your fingers slacken, and the knots hold. But just before your mind fully surrenders, you hear a sound that doesn't belong in a house. A bell, faint metallic, hollow, ringing once somewhere in the village, then again. And this time, closer. The bell's tone is so faint, so distant, you might have thought it was part of the dream, that it came from the edges of sleep where logic softens and symbols take shape. But there was something physical in it, something cold and metallic and real. You lie perfectly still in your sling, surrounded by the breathless quiet of the cottage, and you wait to hear it again. For a long moment, there is nothing, only the whisper of night air moving through the thatch like an old prayer. But then, another ring. Closer now, just a single tone, high, hollow, empty. Bells don't ring themselves in your village. The only one still standing is the rusted iron bell that hangs from the old chapel at the north end of town, a building that hasn't seen worship in years. It hasn't chimed in months. Not since the priest vanished and the last 2 pews were pulled down for firewood. The villagers don't speak of it. Most won't even pass near it after dark. That bell should not ring. And yet it does. You sit up slightly in the sling, your breath caught in your chest. The rope creaks faintly under your weight, but you stay low. Outside, the fog thickens, pressed against the window panes like a slow, creeping tide. Your cottage feels suspended in space, as if the rest of the world has dropped away, leaving only this one warm dot of light surrounded by dark mist and deeper things. The bell rings again, softer this time, maybe from farther away, maybe from closer. It's impossible to tell in the fog. You lower yourself from the sling. You don't remember making the decision to do so, only that your feet now rest on the dirt floor, and the chill seeps instantly into your skin. The cold is strange, sticky, clinging, not like ordinary air. It feels like the absence of something essential. You wrap your shawl tighter, pull the iron latch on the door, and step outside. The village is almost gone in the fog. Shapes of houses appear and vanish like ghosts as you move. Lanterns, long extinguished, sway faintly in the distance, creaking on their hooks. You hear the river, but you don't see it. The sound is wrong, too thick, too still. You follow the direction of the bell, though no path guides you. The sound comes and goes, unpredictable. A single ring, then nothing for a minute, then 2, then 3, clustered together like breathless knocking on a hollow door. Your feet crunch gently on frost-covered earth as you pass the baker's house, its door half open, the windows dark. A wheelbarrow lies overturned in the path, its contents gone. You do not stop. You do not call out. The mist around you curls like wool smoke, sometimes thick enough to blind, sometimes parting just enough to show glimpses, shapes that don't look like houses. Walls with no roofs, doors that open into blackness. One, you swear, has rope hanging from its eaves looped, swaying, but no beam to hang from. At last you reach the chapel. It's smaller than you remember. Bent low under the weight of time, its once white stones turned the color of old teeth. Ivy has eaten its corners and half the roof is gone. But the bell remains. It hangs in the open belfry above the entry arch, tarnished, crooked, and still. It does not move. There is no rope, no hand pulling it. Yet the sound came from here. You are certain. You step inside. The air is different in the chapel, stale, but thick with memory. Candles long gone still leave scent in the walls. Incense clings to the broken flagstones. The pews are dust-covered bones of themselves, and the altar is draped in mold. But it's not empty. Hanging above the altar, barely visible in the gloom, is something you do not understand. A figure not carved, not painted, but constructed. A form built from rope, twisted lengths of it bound tightly together into the shape of a man, or something that once was. The head is just a knot, enormous and complex. Loops hang from the shoulders. Its limbs are draped and coiled, like it was meant to be worn, or inhabited. The entire thing sways faintly, though there is no breeze. As you stare, you begin to see something else etched symbols on the stone below its feet. The same spiral knot markings that appeared in your cottage. You back away, slowly, silently. Something tells you that the figure does not want to be noticed, that its purpose is not yet fulfilled. You turn, you walk, you do not run. Not through the fog, not in this village. When you finally reach your home, the sky has begun to gray, not with dawn, but with more fog. You cannot tell the time. Your limbs are stiff with cold. You step inside, latch the door, and press your back against it. You wait and listen, nothing. You climb the ladder to your sling, but something feels different. The knots are wrong, not loose, but changed, as if someone else retied them, as if someone stronger and more practiced has wrapped the ropes into unfamiliar patterns, loops you don't remember tying, tensions that don't feel like your hands. You don't climb in, not tonight. You sleep on the floor for the first time in weeks. The rats do not come, but just before sleep, in the stillness of the fireless dark, you hear a creak above your head, a sound like rough hands adjusting a sling. Not yours, another. Sleep on the floor is not like sleep in the air. It's heavier, earth-bound, weighted with the knowledge that something might be just inches away waiting, crouched, curled in a dark corner, but strangely, it's safer. For the first time in weeks, you rest with your body pressed to packed earth and straw beneath the swinging net you once trusted. The rope creaks faintly above you as it sways, as if disturbed by some unseen breath. But it doesn't pull taut, it doesn't lift, it simply hangs. You fall asleep not because you feel safe, but because your body cannot stay awake any longer. It pulls you down like a tide. In your dreams, the chapel is burning. The rope figure stands at the center, smoke wrapping around its limbs like fog around a tree. The head tilts toward you, not fast, but slowly, with great purpose. The knot eyes stare through firelight, and you can hear something inside the hollow rope. Breathing, not human. Not even alive, but breathing all the same. When you wake, the sling is still above you, still swaying. Only now, something is in it. You don't rise. You don't sit. You stay on the floor, wrapped in stiff blankets and morning chill. eyes fixed on the shape above. You don't need a candle to see it. The light that filters through the cracks in the shutters is just enough to show you the curve of something in the sling. It's full, occupied, a lump of shadow, motionless and wrong. You stare for hours. The shape does not move. Eventually, you crawl to the door and step outside into a village that no longer pretends. The fog is lifted, revealing streets that are emptier than ever. Doors hang open. Blankets flap gently on lines. But there are no voices, no footsteps. You walk the length of the square and back. No one returns your glance. You don't go to the chapel again. You don't speak of the thing in your sling. You simply wait. Each night, you build a small fire that you never light. You braid new knots into fresh rope, though you do not hang it. And always, just before sleep, you look up. It's always there now, sometimes still, sometimes slowly shifting, like something settling deeper into a nest. Once you saw it sway without wind, tilting as though it looked down at you. But you never see it leave. You never see it arrive. It's just there. One night you place a bowl of milk beneath it, a childish offering, a test. By morning the bowl is overturned and licked clean. You do not try again. You stop hearing the rats entirely. The nights are quieter now, but that quiet carries a different weight. Less like silence, more like waiting. You dream often of hanging, not yourself, but others, dozens of them. Ropes tied in perfect knots, some swinging, some still. Their faces are gone, smoothed out like worn statues. But their hands always reach for you, not to drag you up, but to offer you their ropes. They want you to climb. You wake one night with the distinct memory of standing on the windowsill, arms outstretched, as if ready to step into the sling again, but you never moved. You are still on the floor, still wrapped tight, and yet the window is open, and the sling is empty. You look away. You do not search the shadows. You simply close the window, lock it, and do not speak of it again. The next night, the sling is full once more, as though it never left. You begin to understand something important, something unspoken, but deeply true. The rope doesn't want to kill you. It wants to cradle you. It wants to lift you, suspend you, rock you to sleep like a mother rocking a child. But there is something in that comfort that devours, something hungry in its patience. Not violent, just inevitable. You find yourself reaching for the rope some nights, just to feel the weave, just to remind yourself that it's still there, waiting. You don't climb in, but your fingers linger. And then one morning you awaken to find the sling cut down. It lies on the floor beside you, limp and coiled like shed skin. The knots are untied, every loop unspooled. The canvas still smells faintly of the thing that rested inside. Earth, rope, ash, the scent of forgotten things. You stare at it for a long time, and then, for the first time since your father vanished, you speak aloud. I know, you whisper. I won't fight it. That night you rebuild the sling, stronger this time. The knots are yours, but the rope feels older. It wraps around your fingers with memory. When you climb back into the sling that night, the rope feels different under your fingers, cooled, nearly electric, as though it carries a heartbeat. The knots sit heavier against the beam than they ever have before, weighted with both purpose and promise. You lie back and close your eyes, the world shifting gently beneath your palms as the sling begins to sway. It's a soft movement, like a boat rocking at anchor. Above you, the ceiling stretches into darkness, vast and intimate all at once. You lift your chin slightly, imagining stars between the thatched gaps. The breath in your chest slows to match the rhythm of the swing. In and out, dot, dot, in, dot, dot, and out. Until your senses buzz in a steady hum, neither awake nor asleep, but floating between both. In the thinning veil of that twilight dream, you perceive subtle differences. The air is warmer, richer. There is the faintest scent of pipe smoke and moss. It's not unpleasant more like the memory of a warm afternoon in summer, before the plague, before the fog, before the bells stopped ringing. It evokes a time you know you never lived, yet it nestles in your bones like an old lullaby. You drift deeper, just at the edge of consciousness, when you feel the gentle tug. Just one loop, at the center of your sling, you startle, opening your eyes to the blackness above. For a heartbeat, you think it was a dream. Then it happens, again a slow, deliberate pull that rocks you backward. This time you don't fight it. You let it. The rope slides through the beam hook, so softly that it feels like trust, not fear. You close your eyes again. The swaying grows more pronounced, steadier, more confident. You lie in your sling as though cradled by an invisible hand, guided by someone who knows every turn of the knots, every whisper of your breath. The sensation is intimate, comforting, not safe, but familiar, like someone singing you to sleep. Your thoughts begin to blur, memories, dreams, whispers folding into one another. You feel weightless, suspended between sky and earth, held by something ancient. There is no rush, no desperation, just the soft wind of the swing, the gentle holding of rope, and the faint scent of moss. And then you hear it again, the bell, not distant this time, near, immediate, a single toll that reverberates through your body, rippling through the canvas beneath you. It is neither welcome nor unwelcome, just a presence, like a punctuation in your dream. As it echoes, your mind opens like a door turning on slow hinges, and you sense shapes forming at the edges of your awareness, vague outlines of people, faces blurred by memory, reaching toward you with empty hands. You drift. You float. You let the dream carry you. When you awaken, the sling is gently swaying. The dawn light is soft, pale. Birdsong begins beyond the walls. You lie there for a long moment, dazed in comfort, wondering if last night was real. You reach up to touch the rope. It's as solid as ever. Your knots are intact. The knotwork feels older, wiser, older than you are, like a secret language written in hemp and sweat. You begin the day quietly, almost reverently. You collect water, chop kindling, and breathe without haste. You feel different, softer, less afraid of the dark above. The villagers avoid you less. Now perhaps they see in your eyes that you no longer carry the tension of fear. You feel less like one suspended by dread and more like someone held by something larger. That night, the rope does not move. No bells, no tug, no whispers. But you still sleep in the sling, and when dawn comes, you find something new waiting. A single, small shell white and smooth tied into one knot of your rope. You have no reason to question who placed it there. You simply untie it carefully, cradle it in your hand, and then slip it into your pocket without unlocking your knots. As the days pass, small gifts appear at the edge of your sling. A sprig of lavender, a handful of pebbles worn smooth by river, a scrap of cloth embroidered with strange symbols you don't recognize. Each is left with care, each is untampered, each is a gift rather than a threat. You begin to feel a strange companionship with the presence overhead. Not friendship, something less defined, more elemental. A guardian, a guide, a watcher. It's hard to say, but it no longer evokes fear. In the hush of night, you sometimes whisper above to whatever is there. You tell its secret small ones about your fears, your dreams, your longing for company. The sling rocks in reply. Not always, but often. A gentle response, a nod, a promise. And so it continues, night by night. Small tug, slow rock, delicate gift. You learn to trust it. Learn to feel the difference between a friend and a captor. The rope becomes your anchor, your cradle, your comfort. The rafters become home, not prison. You do not know what it is yet. You do not know what it wants, yet you no longer fear the roof above. Instead, you find yourself humming again an old lullaby about lanterns and safe harbors, and of rivers that never flow backward. In time, the ritual becomes your own. Every evening, you whisper your lullaby, climb into the sling, tie your knots, and wait. And every night you drift, suspended above a quiet cottage, held by a presence you can't see but feel in the weave of rope and hush of the rafters. It becomes easy, this new way of life, almost too easy. As the nights pass, the rhythm of the rope and the hush of the rafters begin to feel like the only natural way to exist. You sleep more now than you used to, not out of exhaustion, but comfort. There's something sacred in the stillness, the act of being held, of being carried by threads spun from shadow and breath. You still wake in the dark sometimes, but the fear is gone. In its place, curiosity blooms. You begin to watch the movement of your sling as though it were the wind guiding your fate. Some nights it rocks more than others. Some nights it's still. Once it lifted slightly on its own, drawing you higher toward the thatch. Not far, not forcefully, just enough to let you feel the invitation. You didn't resist. You let it pull, allowed yourself to drift upward for a few moments before it. Lowered again, you whispered, "I trust you," and the rope grew warm beneath your palm. Not hot, just warmer than it should have been. Alive in a way that wood and fiber should not be done in the morning. You found your sling's edge tucked neatly beneath a folded corner of your shawl secured with a knot you had not tied. It was precise, purposeful, not merely to keep you safe, but to keep you still. You ran your fingers over it for a long while before you undid it. Your knots have become more complex since then, more reverent. You tie them slowly now, as though each loop is a prayer. They hold better, feel stronger, as if the sling approves. The gifts continue. One morning you wake to find a smooth stone, perfectly round, nestled beside your cheek. Another time a loop of braided grass tied at both ends into a ring. You begin, keeping them in a small wooden box beside the hearth, your little reliquary. Each item seems to hum faintly when touched. Not a sound exactly, more a sense like a vibration in the air just before thunder. And yet there's no fear in them, just presence. You come to believe these tokens aren't warnings. They're reminders, proof that you are being watched, not with hunger, but with attention. with care. Still questions bloom in the silence. What is it that lives above? What is it that once claimed the floor and now cradles the beams? You think back to the days when rats ruled the night, when claws and teeth and soft wet tails marked your dreams. You haven't seen one in weeks now. The floor is clean, too clean, as though something bigger than rats came to claim what was once theirs, something that asked for stillness instead of scraps. One morning, you walk outside and see that several houses nearby have collapsed. Their roofs have caved in as if pulled downward by invisible hands. But you know they were abandoned long before that. The fog has stopped returning. The mist is gone. In its place, quiet skies, gray-blue and heavy with unshed rain. The village has entered a long silence. You no longer hear babies crying. No coughs, no dogs. You're not sure who remains. But you're still here, and so is the presence. You begin speaking to it aloud at night, softly, gently, only in whispers. You tell it about the first time you saw a firefly, the way the stars looked after the frost, the way your father's hands smelled like ash and pine. Sometimes the sling rocks as you speak. Sometimes the shadows shift along the ceiling, and sometimes nothing happens at all, but you know you're being heard. One night, just before you sleep, you ask the question you've avoided all this time. You speak to the rafters with a calm voice, steady and warm. What are you? The rope shifts. It doesn't pull or tighten or answer, but something moves behind the thatch. Something leans forward, not with menace, with intention, and you feel the presence descend just slightly lower than usual. It's close enough that your sling shivers, close enough that the air carries a scent you've never smelled before. Not decay, not dust, something older, like wood soaked in rain for 100 years, bound in leather, warmed by fire. A feeling passes through you, then not fear, not understanding, but recognition. It's like waking from a dream and realizing the story you were in wasn't a fantasy at all. It was memory. The presence above is not a visitor. It is something that's always been here, something waiting to be remembered. It has lived in the beams since before beams were beams. It has rocked generations to sleep. It has held the desperate, the grieving, the wandering. It is not cruel. It is not kind. It simply holds. The next morning your sling is tied with 9 knots. You never tied the 9th. You run your hand along the rope and find the final knot looped in a way you've never seen woven in a symbol. A spiral, the same one that marked your hearth once. It is smooth and quiet and perfect. You don't undo it. You simply lie back in the sling that evening and stare at the ceiling, knowing now that you are not alone. You haven't been for some time. And as the cradle begins to rock, as the breath in your chest grows soft and rhythmic, you feel something watching not to consume, but to remember. It knows your name. You feel it not in your ears, but in the warmth that fills your fingers. It calls you with no words. It holds you without hands. You close your eyes, and you surrender again to the rope. There's a moment just after the sun slips below the edge of the world, where the sky turns the color of damp wool. Not quite blue, not quite gray, just that perfect in-between hue that belongs to dusk alone. It's in that moment you begin, preparing the sling again, though by now It feels less like preparing and more like offering. You no longer tie the knots out of habit. You tie them with care, with reverence, each loop pressed into the wood with a whisper of thanks. 9 turns, never fewer, never more. The rhythm is sacred now, built into your bones. The air inside the cottage is quiet, the kind of quiet that hums beneath the skin. You move slowly through it, brushing your fingertips across the rope, the beam, the worn stone of the hearth. Everything feels older now, not just age, but ancient, as though time itself bends slightly here, folding in on itself to make space for memory. You no longer mark days by sunrise or task. You mark them by how the sling moves, by the scent of what's left behind in the morning, sometimes lavender, sometimes ash, sometimes nothing but the soft, dusty imprint of presence that tonight the sling doesn't sway on its own. Instead, it waits for you. The canvas cradles your form as you sink into it, a perfect fit, shaped by repetition and surrender. The rope wraps around your hips, shoulders, and spine with the same gentleness it's had since the first time you slept in it, but there's something new now, something deeper. The way the knots hold you feels like being remembered, as though the rafters have begun to learn the shape of your dreams. You close your eyes, and the rocking begins. It's slower tonight. A motion so soft it feels imagined. At first, like the shift of wind in a dream, but it grows just slightly into a rhythm, steady as breath. The world around you blurs at the edges. Your awareness lifts and stretches, no longer tied to the weight of your body. You begin to feel yourself rising, not your flesh, but your story, lifted gently from your bones and carried upward into the thatched dot, and then you see them dot not with eyes, with something else. The space above the beam has always been shadow, but now it opens like the fold of a page, the turning of a curtain, and within that space you see other slings, dozens of them, hundreds, swinging in perfect silence, suspended in rafters that stretch infinitely beyond your ceiling. Each sling cradles someone sleeping. Some are curled like children. Others lie flat and still. You do not see faces, only outlines, only peace. They are not trapped. They are held and among them you feel the watchers. They do not look like people. They do not have hands or eyes or names. They are knots in the grain of old wood. They are warmth in fraying rope. They are sighs caught in candle smoke. You feel them all around you, never loud, never sudden, simply present, holding the sleepers, rocking them gently, learning their weight, learning yours. A voice not spoken, but understood, reaches you. It carries no sound, just meaning, a deep, humming knowing that wraps itself around your ribs. It says you are not alone. That's all. No threats, no promises. Just that one truth. And it echoes not through your ears, but through the sling itself. You feel it in the knots, in the canvas, in the slow pull of the rope as it rocks you just once more, then stills. You wake just before dawn. The sling is unmoving. The air is thick with warmth, like someone just left the room. You sit up slowly, muscles loose and tingling. The world feels quiet again, but not empty. Never empty. There's something tucked in beside your pillow, something small and woven. You lift it gently. It's a loop of hair, braided so finely, it's almost thread. Your breath catches. You don't know where it came from, but you know it's meant for you. Outside, the sky begins to shift from gray to gold. The trees in the distance sway in slow conversation. You step down from the sling with quiet feet and feel the earth beneath you like you're touching it for the first time. Everything feels new and very old all at once. You make tea, stir it slowly, and sip in silence, the cup warm in your hands. When you glance back at the sling, it moves once, just slightly, as though acknowledging your gaze. You smile. Not because everything is okay, but because everything finally makes sense. There is a kind of magic that only reveals itself after surrender. It doesn't arrive with thunder or visions, but with quiet repetition, the tying of rope, the gathering of breath, the simple motion of lifting oneself into the air each night and choosing to be held. And that's what you've come to understand, that the act of climbing into the sling, of trusting the knots, of letting go of the floor, is an offering in itself. A gesture that says, I'm not trying to escape this. I am here. Let the rafters remember me. The village continues to change, but you don't measure it in terms of days anymore. Time is no longer linear. It folds. It loops. Some mornings the houses feel closer together. Some days the paths are overgrown with weeds you don't remember planting. People vanish quietly, not with cries or commotion, just absence. A door left ajar, a pair of boots at the edge of a porch, a sling swaying slightly in an empty room. You wonder if they've gone up into the rafters above your rafters, into the dream field you glimpsed when the shadow opened and showed you all the other sleepers. You hope so. It feels like the right kind of vanishing. Each night your rituals grow more deliberate. You no longer sleep with a blanket. Instead, you wrap yourself in a length of cloth tied to the rope itself, letting the fibers rest against your chest like a heartbeat. You hum softly as you ascend the ladder. Sometimes the sling sways before you even lie down, as though it knows you're coming, as though it's glad. You run your hand across the beam once before lying back, fingers brushing over the small groove your father once carved there with his belt knife, a tiny X marking the center of the house. He never told you why he did it, but now you think. Perhaps he was marking a place for watching. Tonight, the presence is stronger. Not louder, never loud, but more aware. The moment you close your eyes, you feel it lean in, not to speak, not to touch, just to be there, with you, like it's waiting for your breathing to slow, your mind to loosen. And when it does, the sway begins not side to side this time, but in a slow spiral, a gentle circular motion that turns you inward deeper, like falling asleep while floating in warm water. You begin to see light in the darkness, not firelight, not sunlight, something older, a dull gold like burnished metal, hidden for centuries and only now revealed. It shines from beneath the floorboards of your dream. You reach toward it, but the sling cradles you tighter, holding you from falling. Too far. You are meant to see it, not touch it. Not yet. The golden light pulses gently, timed with your breath. And within it you see fragments of rope, not just the one you lie in, but thousands. Some frayed, some coiled, some tied into perfect loops that never unravel. Each one glows with memory. You see shadows of hands tying them, figures leaning into beams, whispering names. You understand now that the knots are more than fastenings. They are offerings. Each twist a word, each loop a sentence, each knot a memory tied in place so it would not be forgotten. Every house, every rafter, every sling, in every dark village like yours, they are all connected. The rope is not just rope. It is the language of sleep, of surrender, of the quiet pact made between the living and the rafters above Dot. And then you feel it something shift. Not within the dream, not inside you. Around you, the sling tilts slightly. Not enough to startle, just enough to draw your awareness back to your body. You open your eyes not to fear, but to presence. There is something at the edge of the beam, not a figure, not a creature, just a shadow with weight. You feel it settle, not press, just settle, like a cat curling beside your bed. It doesn't move, it simply watches, and you realize it has been doing this for many nights now, perhaps always. But tonight, for the first time, you're allowed to notice. You close your eyes again, trusting it completely. Dot in that moment. The sling tightens around your hips, not dangerously, but reassuringly. The knots stretch and breathe like lungs in fabric. The cradle holds you as though recognizing something final, something finished. You are no longer a visitor here, no longer just a sleeper. You have become a part of the pattern, a line in the rope, a thread in the beam you drift into. Sleep more easily than ever. This time you don't dream of climbing, you dream of weaving. The days are different now, though you can't explain why. The village is quieter, yes, but not dead. It hums softly, like a lantern behind thick curtains. The light is there, but it doesn't reach your skin. You don't need it to. You know. Longer look for others. You don't check for footprints or peering eyes. You know some are still here. You can feel them in their beams, in their rooms, in the stillness that passes between buildings like shared breath. No one waves anymore, but no one has to. You're all held by the same unseen threads. Your sling is no longer a place you visit at night. It's your true home now. The floor, the walls, even the sky itself, they feel like distractions, temporary places. But when you lift yourself into that nest of rope and canvas, your body understands where it belongs. You don't just lie down. You return, and the rafters remember you. Tonight, the sway begins before you even settle. The motion feels anticipatory, welcoming. The knots hold you as always, but with more warmth, more memory in their tension. As you lie back, you murmur your soft song, not a tune now, but a sequence of breaths, repeated just as your father once did when the wind rattled the shutters. The sound isn't beautiful, but it is right. The presence above responds, not with movement, but with pressure. A pause in the air, a deliberate stillness, like someone listening closely. And then something begins to rise around you. Not wind, not light, but feeling. It gathers like fog beneath the skin, tingling at your fingertips and behind your ears. You close your eyes, and in the hush of your sling, you feel it ropes, dozens of them, hundreds, stretching outward from you, each one tied to another sling, another sleeper, another memory, a network of woven night. You are not just being rocked to sleep. You are being carried along a current of dreamers swaying together, suspended like stars in the rafters of the world. This time when the dream arrives, it does not come in fragments. It opens in full like a great door unlocking in the sky. You are standing, not climbing, not floating, standing in a space above the beams, the space behind the thatch. You should not be able to stand here, and yet you are. The floor is not made of wood. It is made of woven, rope-tight and wide and endless, every strand glowing faintly golden, each intersection pulsing softly. Beneath your bare feet, the weave stretches infinitely outward, the knots glowing brighter wherever you step. Around you, other figures stand not human, not human. Some wear the shape of memory, others the shape of bone. A few are little more than drifting thread and breath, but none of them are frightening. You recognize them, not with mind, but with spirit. These are the watchers, the weavers, the rockers of slings, the ones who came before. Their presence is so vast, so quiet, that you find yourself weeping not from sadness or fear, but from recognition. You have known them all your life, in lullabies, in warm rope, in the way the rafters never let you fall. One of them steps forward. They are tall, or seem tall, though they don't touch the floor. Rope hangs from their shoulders like a cloak. Their face is woven from many strands, looping and crossing and knotting together, moving as they breathe. They do not speak aloud, but you hear them clearly. We remember who stays. You don't ask what that means. You already understand. The floor was never truly safe. It was the place of forgetting, but the rafters, the slings, the beams, they remember. Those who sleep in the arms of rope are never truly lost. They are woven into the rafters of the world. You ask one question, your voice quiet and full of warmth. Am I one of you now? The rope figure leans close, not menacing, not commanding, just present. The knots in their chest begin to glow brighter. The threads behind them ripple gently, like river reeds in wind. You've always been, and just like that, the floor beneath you fades. You feel yourself return, not fall, but lower, settle into the familiar shape of your sling. The room around you returns, blurred and soft like morning fog. You are swaying gently. You are warm. Your hands rest on your chest, fingers curled into the shape of a knot dot, and beside your head, one final offering, a tiny carving smoothed from wood, a figure in a sling, just like yours, just like the others. You lift it gently and tuck it beside your pillow. The next breath you take is the deepest you've known. The rafters sigh above you. The house holds still. You are not afraid of the dawn, not anymore.